problem for you?
I've been studying now for around 9 years.
9 years, all right. And in previous attempts, what kinds of therapies have you gone to?
In previous attempts, I've attended several group therapy sessions at universities and clinics. I've done therapy in which I talked to the beat of a metronome. I even went to the hypnotist because the theory was that stutter was caused by anxiety, so I went to a hypnotist to see whether he could calm me down.
Did that do anything?
Not really.
I know very little about stuttering except that the problem exists, and as we can see, it's very difficult. Dr. Goldiamond, how many people stutter?
It has been estimated that about 1 to 3% of males, that is adults in the population, stutter, and about 1/8 of that number, females. That's a much smaller number.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite a handicap for them all. They have difficulties in communicating. They lose out on jobs and job opportunities. They find it socially embarrassing. They don't go out. When they do go out, they're treated with stares of hostility and the like, and they feel uncomfortable about it. And some of them do go out.
Well, I know that you have a very successful program. How long have you been working on this?
Well, in 1958, we started our first experimental work to see if stuttering could be treated in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And the results were encouraging, so we've had a program which we have developed, and it's been running since 1963. We've dealt with over 140 clients, and at the present moment it averages about 30 sessions for each.
Mm-hmm. Well, since the pathological approach, I know, is a nasty, that's something we don't just do, I assume this involves a constructional approach to the problem.
That's right, it is constructional. We are not interested in eliminating non-fluency or stuttering. Instead, we're trying to establish a specific pattern of fluency, which is quite similar to the pattern that I am using right now, and that you would not have noticed is a standard pattern of a certain kind unless I had said so. The program we use is a step-by-step program which uses backward and forward programming techniques. It utilizes shaping, fading, imitation, and even transfer. And so basically it will exemplify all the procedures we have talked about for dealing with other kinds of problems.
Okay, well, what's the absolute first step? Where do we start?
What we start out is, first we want to find out where the person is now relative to our goal of establishing fluency. Most stutterers do speak fluently, many on many occasions, some of them only at certain times. So we have an initial interview to get a sample of speech, and we will see Miss Cecile Dunn interviewing John, and we will see Miss Randine Parry doing bass lines on the same stutterer, who is one of a set of twins.
Mm-hmm. For most people, there are some times when they are able to be fluent, okay?
Yes.
And I'd like to know a little bit about what those times are for you. When are you able to be fluent right now?
Okay. Oh, for all I can think of, 4 or 5 times when I talk fluently. A couple of them is if I sing a song, I find that I can sing the song completely fluent, and it's the same as when I talk in unison with someone else. Let's say, for instance, if you were to read a section of a paragraph and I would read the exact same section, I would talk at the same rate as you, and I would keep up with you. Also, as I've said before, I can talk fine when I talk to the beat of a metronome, because there's rhythm there. Also, I can also talk fine when I'm completely alone. If there's no one around or within earshot range, but for some reason, I'm not as nervous and I can speak.
For this baseline, I'm going to have you read from the paper that's in front of you.
See the heading Programming. What I want you to do is when I tell you to start to read, and we'll continue on that for about 45 minutes. I'll tell you when to begin, read at your usual rate, and when we're finished, I'll tell you you can stop. Okay? Can you find where we're starting?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. Why don't you start right now reading?
The terms programming and program are applied in a variety of ways. I shall restrict my definition to their use in Oxford laboratory research and its extension to programming, instruction, behavior modification, and biofeedback. In the Oxford laboratory, sex programs are used to establish behavior patterns, which can then be used for investigative purposes. For example, to investigate the effects of a drug on retention, we use delayed match to sample. A monkey is confronted by a small panel on the wall, onto which an illuminated circle is projected. When he presses the panel, the illumination goes out. 5 seconds later, 2 panels light up. One contains a circle and the other an ellipse.
What's all the clicking and button pressing that she's doing there?
Randy is keeping records throughout. With her thumb, she presses a button to indicate each non-fluency. With another finger, she presses a button to indicate each fluent word. We keep records throughout, not only of these measures, but a variety of others. These are, ongoing records. There are also records with numbers. There are also tapes of every session, so that we can see progress throughout, and that the client can also see the progress, because the records are shown to the client.
Okay, so now that we have the goal and we know where we are, then what's the program? What is that step?
The first step is to shape a basic pattern, which is fluent. We'll produce this. It's not the one you'll wind up with, but we start out with a pattern which produces fluency. There's reading material on film or on printed pages. The material is juncture, that it's phrased in a certain way. The client is instructed to take breaths and breathe at the end of each one. He's instructed to project his voice so that he uses up the breath. There are all kinds of things which we examine. He's instructed to intonate and all kinds of things going. We're teaching him a new pattern of speech which we could all profit by. Now, Jim, the other twin, whom you will shortly see, is in his 3rd session, and Randy is still shaping breathing and also projection.
Okay.
Today, we're going to move on to a new step. But first, let's review the one that we've been working on for the last couple of sessions. The first few sessions, you remember that you learned the basics for your new fluent speech pattern. Now remember, I'm going to be flashing phrases up on the screen. I want you to look at what's up there. After you've seen it, to take a breath. Remember, from the diaphragm. Take a breath. As you begin to exhale, I want you to say the entire phrase as a unit. Okay? The other thing to remember is to project your voice. Use that air to say the words. Okay? We'll start with my modeling one, and you'll follow, just like we did yesterday. Okay?
Okay.
Which we would like you.
Which we would like you.
Okay, project a little more. To follow.
To follow.
As you read.
As you read.
This material.
This material.
Okay, can I hear that one once more for the entry into the phrase? This material.
This material.
Okay, I'm going to let you do a couple. This time, do it on your own.
As you know.
Okay, let me model that for you. I want a little more projection. As you know.
As you know.
Sounds good. Okay, go on to the next.
The paper progresses.
So, what I think I've just seen is a backward program. The fluency is provided right at the beginning. The goal is there.
That's right. That's what the client comes for, and he gets it immediately. So that part is backward. However, it's also forward in that the pattern is progressively changed from one to another, to another, to another, till it's a well-inflected, natural-sounding one, which the person can transfer outside. So the program in general has both backward and forward elements.
The shot in the arm as well as a series of progressions.
That's right. Now, the next step, you know, normally in the treatment that we would see, but we're not going to see, would involve the fading of junctured material until the client would be juncturing properly on his own.
Okay, well, give me a little more information now on junctured material, because I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, when I say now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their party,
yes,
whatever it is, or country, however you want to put it, that is well junctured. But I could say now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of the country. I could pause there, and that's when a fluent speaker tends to put in all these ahs and ahs and so forth, and the stutterer also tends to stutter at exactly those points. But if, however, he rejunctures and says, now is the time for all good men to come to the aid, and so on, then he will be speaking properly.
Okay. So with the juncturing on their own, you have modeling going all the way throughout the program.
That's right. We're modeling better inflection all the time. You know, you can say the consecrated cross-eyed bear or the consecrated cross-eyed bear.
I don't think I could say that very often.
But whichever way you say, it's where you inflect that makes the big difference in what you hear and what's conveyed. And so the next scene, you will see Seal modeling better inflection with Bill, who is a different client from the other two. He's in no way related to Jack and Jim.
Today, what we want to try and do is to add a little intonation and shape that up. So what I'm going to do is to model each phrase for you. And I'd like you to repeat the phrase after I model it, trying to imitate the intonation that I'm using. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Read the groupings.
Read the groupings.
As groupings.
As groupings.
And try.
And try.
To speak.
To speak.
This way outside.
This way outside.
Force yourself.
Force yourself.
Okay, your intonation is good. To pause.
To pause.
Your pattern and your rate are also good. Become an actor.
Become an actor.
And emphasize.
And emphasize.
Each juncture.
Each juncture.
You must try.
You must try.
To run your speech.
To run your speech.
Good. Pattern is good, projection is good, and your intonation sounds fine. Otherwise,
Otherwise,
it may run you.
it may run you.
This was session number 13. He is far more advanced than the others.
Well, does everyone take the same amount of time to go through one of these programs?
No, the progress is based on the success at the previous step. Some people may require several steps or several repetitions of the same step with different material, of course, or require more coaching on a particular step. Others can breeze through one, matter of fact, can breeze through all of them, and others can breeze through one and not breeze through another.
Okay. Well, now, this one, the subject was still reading. Now, there's a big jump between reading something and going to conversation, which is free form.
Yep, that's quite a big jump. We use a fading procedure in this case. The first step is sentence generation.
Okay, now fading was that one that we did last time where you took me through a series of words and I had to guess what was correct. That's
right.
Fading.
That's
okay.
fading, right. It's like the pigeon changing the color,
Uh-huh.
too. Okay, the first step in this, after reading, after he's reading and has the pattern down beautifully when he reads, the first step is, we call this sort of sentence generation. He is asked a specific and direct question referring to a list of words which the client and the person working with him had developed. And there's a question about this one word. There's a whole list of these, very specific and direct, and he makes up a statement about it. And then gradually, these kinds of instructions are faded out, and pretty soon he is engaged in more free-flowing conversation on topics of his own choice. The next one we will see, incidentally, is Randy working with Bill. And that's going to be session number 20 for him.
Okay.
Okay, today we're going to start conversation from the outline that you brought in. Now, in yesterday's session, you had words from which to make up a sentence. And then I started asking you questions about the sentences you had generated. Okay? Today we'll start off with the script, and you have listed some of the things that we'll talk about. We'll start off with short sentences. All right?
All right.
Using your pattern. Take your time. Okay. You mention that you have a car. Can you tell me what color is your car?
The color of the car is brown.
Okay. Why don't you tell me the color of the car again? It sounded good.
The color of the car is brown.
Okay. What is the make of the car?
It is a Dodge.
What year is the car?
It is a 1968 model.
Uh-huh. Okay. Since we're starting out, I'll ask you to repeat. I'll ask the same question again. What is the year of the car?
It is a 1968 model.
Okay. For this session, we'll be having just a conversation. Okay? Before we started the session, you mentioned you'd just been to a movie. Which one was it?
The name of the movie was Amarcord.
Okay. Where did you see it?
I saw it at the Village Theater.
I haven't heard about that one. What is it about?
It is about a small Italian town.
Okay, let's have that sentence again.
It is about a small Italian town.
What you'll notice there was that during the first conversation sessions, the content was determined. She was asking about the color of the car, the make of the car, and so on. However, toward the end, the content became freer, but the pattern was still maintained.
Mm-hmm. But at this point, he is still in the booth, and that's relatively womb-like atmosphere. What about outside of that
Yes,
booth?
it's a big step to get outside in the wide world, isn't it? Well, what we do is we also program that. You know, there's now this French obstetrician who is talking about putting kids in warm water and gradually taking them out. Well, we've been doing that all along. They're programmed to sessions outside the booth, different cafeterias, different places, different offices, and always progressively more and more complicated.
So it's like the toe in first, and then the ankle, and then the knee, and so on.
That's right. Bill is here today as part of his program of going and seeing and talking in new places. And we'll see what this does to his pattern, because you know, patterns like this, speaking before these cameras, really often throw people. And we'll see what happens now. This is of course, Bill. And you're about through with the program towards the latter stages of it. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, now we are going to watch for a few seconds what you were like on the initial interview when you were responding to a question about what would a man from outer space observe when he saw you in your completed stage. So let's watch that now.
All right. He would see me discussing ideas that I think it sounds tense and cramped. It looks that way too.
How do you feel right now?
I feel much more relaxed.
How has the program been progressing for you?
I think it has been progressing very well.
Can you describe some things about the program?
Well, one thing is I've been able to expand my fluent speech in more situations.
This is a brand new situation for you, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
To get right into this TV studio with all these lights on you.
Yes.
That's part of the program right now. We don't expose everybody to it. But I guess you're sort of lucky.
Yes. I guess so.
Okay, can you just tell me about that program? It was sort of both backward and forward, wasn't it?
Yes.
Well, what part of it was backward and what part was forward?
Well, I started out, and it seemed I could speak fluently right away. Only it was in a limited situation, a very limited situation. Yeah. I could say a short phrase fluently.
Yeah. And then what happened as the program progressed?
And then gradually, I was able to say longer phrases fluently. And then I was able to put together phrases and say whole sentences fluently. And then even whole sequences of thoughts. In the first phases, it was only reading that I was able to do fluently. But then later, I was able to transfer that into conversations. I remember in my first sessions, it was easy to do reading and very difficult to do conversation. I never thought then that I would be able to do conversation this fluently now.
See now, how long have you been in the program?
It seems like a couple of years.
But how long has it actually been?
It's only been about a month.
About a month. And how long have you been stuttering?
They tell me I've been stuttering since I started talking.
How old are you now?
I'm 35 now.
Okay, so that's about at least 31 or so years, right?
I guess so.
Well, I think you're doing very well. You got to remember to keep your mouth open.
Yes.
And not closed, but that'll be worked on further. Well, thank you very much, Bill. You've been a terrific help and wonderful demonstration, and we appreciate your coming down here. We would like to transfer the pattern that he has acquired here to his own home, to his own normal speaking environment, to speak well in the normal ecology of his speech. And records are kept there by the person far away from us. And we carry on an extensive mail order business with our clients. For example, one person in California writes us that he's fluent under these and these conditions. However, he notes that he tends to be non-fluent when he's excited. However, the records, you see, indicate just exactly what the conditions are which describe excitement. Mm-hmm. And in one case, he is excited when he's angry, but he doesn't stutter then. However, he is excited when he is enthusiastic. Now, when he is angry and excited, it's a blow-by-blow affair, and he's not going to muff it with a stutter, so he's in there with the telling words. However, when he's enthusiastic, he's starting to talk to somebody, and he digs that person, the person digs him, and the conversation goes on, and pretty soon the conversation goes on so rapidly, and he wants to hear himself say things because he's finding he's saying things that are never said before. He wants to hear the other person, so he starts to speak so fast that he forgets his program.
Yeah, almost like a break in the concentration.
There's
now,
a break
we have
in this.
seen the two twins. They are identical twins, John and Jim.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. Goldiamond was telling me a little while ago that they are identical twins, they both stutter, and yet their stuttering patterns, their non-fluency patterns, are different. Now, this seems amazing that it doesn't follow through all the way to the end. Why is there a difference between the twins?
Well, partly they're similar because they've been reared under similar circumstances and similar conditions, similar enough to have them stutter, naturally, so that one is named J and the other is J, Jim, John. They both start out the same way. They both have the same initials. However, they will wear different clothes, which distinguish them from each other. And so now they develop different patterns of non-fluencies, if this is what's involved. So each gets his place in the sun, but in a different way.
Right. Okay. Well, now, doesn't the pattern, doesn't the teaching require continual attention?
Yes, it does require continual attention initially. That is, we learn to drive, and when we're learning to drive, we have to remember to do this and do that and do this and do this. After a while, it becomes automatic. For example, we have to learn when to say who and when to say whom, and after a while, it becomes automatic all the time, almost all the time. Mm-hmm. But basically, what we want to do is, after a while, it'll become automatic.
Well, can you give us a very brief summary on, in effect, what we've been talking about for the last 8 weeks?
Yes, this program, this fluency program, sort of sums up what we've been doing elsewhere. It's an example of all the various other kinds of programs. In addition to the fluency programs, we've dealt with well over 100 people with other problems such as studying, smoking, establishing new eating patterns, new marital relations, child training, physical handicaps, all kinds of other things that can be considered crippling handicaps, including some of them that send people into mental hospitals. Mm-hmm. And they can all be treated in the same constructive way to try to see what is it that they're after. How can we help them get it? Where do we start out with them? Namely, what are their current strengths? What is their history, the diagnosis of their past strengths? In other words, how are they using what they have now in a constructional way? And can we develop better ways for them to get what is their legitimate place in the sun?
Well, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Goldiamond, for being with us for the past 8 weeks. I have learned a great deal. It is true that I am not an amputee. I do not sit in a wheelchair, and I do not stutter, although I do get angry, excited, enthusiastic. But I, too, would like to quit smoking. I, too, have those times when there are problems that I need to solve. And the most important thing for us all to realize is we're essentially in the same boat. We just have different seats. So let's pull together. Thank you.
I think things have been going very well.
What's been happening with regard to your speech?
In regard to my speech, I find that I am